Everyone wants to be happy, of course, but it doesn't take long in our life to realize that there is quite a bit of suffering involved in this proposal, right? We always encounter the cross in our life. And when we encounter that suffering, we get to choose what we do with it. And so we kind of have to ask ourselves in those moments, what do I do with my suffering? What do I do with my cross? What should I do? And here's St. Paul's answer. He says in the second reading, "Now I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I am filling up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ on behalf of his body, which is the church." And so Paul tells us that he is filling up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ by his sufferings. It's a very mysterious thing to say, right? What does that mean? To fill up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ. What could be lacking in the afflictions of Christ, right? If Jesus was on the cross and he did everything for us and his sacrifice was totally sufficient, then what can we say was lacking in the sufferings of Christ? The only thing that was lacking there was our participation, right? Our cooperation, our unifying ourselves with that sacrifice, because that's why he died for us, so that we could be united with him. And so the only thing that's lacking in the afflictions of Christ, the one thing that Jesus couldn't give us, he couldn't force our will, right? He couldn't force us to love him and to unite ourselves with him. And so when Paul says, "I'm filling up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ," he's saying, by my sufferings, I am being united with Jesus. By my sufferings, now my afflictions are becoming united with the afflictions of Jesus. And so even though we love to feel God's presence in those happy and peaceful moments in our life, it's really in those moments of suffering that we can be most deeply united to Jesus. And you can see that in the lives of so many of the saints. It's really kind of an iron law that the better that we suffer, the more that we suffer in union with Christ, the holier we become. And so suffering can unite us with Jesus when we offer it with him. The second sort of mysterious thing that St. Paul says is when he's talking about his sufferings, he says he unites his sufferings with Jesus on behalf of his body, which is the church. Right? Paul is suffering on behalf of Christ's body. And this is the idea of redemptive suffering, right? Maybe we've heard about that. Redemptive suffering, this idea that if I suffer well, if I suffer with Christ, then I'm actually participating in the redemption of the world. And that my suffering in a mystical and a spiritual way is actually helping my brothers and sisters. It's actually bearing spiritual fruit in the body of Christ, in the church. It's helping those that are around me. It's helping the whole world. And it's a crazy thing to think about. Why would my sufferings do any of that? But remember that first point, that when we are united with Jesus in our sufferings become the same as the sufferings of Jesus. And what did the sufferings of Jesus accomplish for the world? They accomplished redemption. They redeemed the whole world. And so whenever we suffer in union with Jesus, our suffering takes on that same power. Not because of us, not because of anything that we do, but because that's how the suffering of Jesus works. It redeems. And so when we suffer in union with him, we contribute to the redemption of the world. If we persevere, if we love in the midst of that difficulty. Remember that Jesus has experienced everything that we have experienced in life. There is nothing that we experience that we cannot offer up to Christ, that we cannot unite with him. Because it's really in bearing our cross and that struggle that spiritual fruit is born. We love the happy moments, and by God's grace we have those as well. We give thanks to God for that blessing. But in those crosses, that's where the spiritual fruit is. The cross of Jesus Christ, the blood that flows from his side. That's where the redemption of the world has come. That's the fount of every single blessing. And so when he gives us a share in that cross, we don't have to push it away. We don't have to pretend that it's not there. We can accept it with love. We can offer it to him. And we can say with St. Paul that I am filling up in my own flesh what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ.